international championships and a regionals win. But then in 2019, we saw a top 4 finish at the North American International Championships. And Diego is one of these players that has been around for a very, very long time. And that is, shall we say, just a taste of his previous accomplishments.
Yeah, the guy frankly just loves playing Pokemon. He's done it for so long. Like, you have a world championship win and that doesn't, stop the hunger. You're still going out there, going to the big tournaments and trying to, gun for the top. And he's doing the same here in the Players' Cup. For Brent, not so many accomplishments on his side just yet, but, still proving himself through this tournament. And we'll see if he can get through the previous world champ.
Absolutely, and you don't get to play the previous world champion in the global finals of the Players' Cup unless you're a pretty good player who's having a pretty good run themselves. So now that we've seen the decks and we've seen the players, it's time to head on over to the game. And like you said, this sounds like it's going to be a pretty interesting one here, because neither of these builds of Zacian really seems to have an inherent advantage over the other. It's going to come down to hands, board state, plays. It's not, well, we imagine it's not going to look like we saw in the previous game, where one deck really is favoured and something crazy has to happen to change that result.
Yeah, the matchup can be quite cat and mousey because there are some things that can stay out of range for Diego quite easily thanks to Full Metal Wall and goggles that can be put down. There's Tool Scrapper that Diego's playing. There's Crushing Hammers as well that Diego's playing. That's something you normally attribute to the Luke Metal side of things. So there's going to be some awkward turns for both players, I imagine, throughout this series. So it's going to be cool to see both players try and navigate those.
It's going to be interesting. Diego has his choice of 2 starting Pokemon, neither of which he really wants to play. He's got the 2 prize support Pokemon Dedenne and the 2 prize support Pokemon Crobat. Both of them really good at drawing cards when you play them onto the bench. Not who you really want to start with. Does have an air balloon to get them out the active, but it's not a phenomenal opening hand. And yeah, looks like I believe Brent's going to be starting here.
He's going to kick things off, and one thing that's really good about Lucario Mermetal players going first is if they can get that energy down, and if they actually hit an energy off Intrepid Sword, they can be putting on a lot of pressure. Looks like none hit there for Brent, unfortunately for him, but at least he's able to develop goggles early, so he's not afraid of any random turn 1 Brave Blade shenanigans coming out from Diego, as he looks to start his turn by ballooning to his Crobat for some free retreat and going for the Dede change, and we do fortunately see a ADP and a Zacian picked up for Diego, and he's also able to pick up a Chaotic Swell. Brent is actually playing 4 copies of Power Plant in this list, and Diego's only playing 1 copy of Chaotic Swell, so he's going to develop that now, try and buy some freedom of Power Plant, and he may be happy just attaching to Arceus Dialga Palkia and Intrepid Soaring to end his turn here.
I mean, it's not bad. The opening hand wasn't good. Whenever you're playing a Dedenne and getting rid of that many cards, it's a sign that you haven't had a great start. But if you can get an energy on the board, and actually a second energy on the board with Metal Saucer, and then Intrepid Sword and get free energy on the field, that is not a terrible start at all. It certainly got a lot better after Dedenne hit the field.
Yeah, that's a really nice turnaround for him. And we'll see if Brent actually has any more Pokemon to play with in the first place. I think the one thing you really want to develop early and threaten is Lucario Melmetal. You want to be able to say, Diego, you can go ahead and use your Altered Creation GX. I'm going to instantly remove those energies and deny Ultimate Ray. I think that's one of the biggest things to bear in mind in this matchup, that allowing Ultimate Ray from the ADP side is just too many energies to deal with, especially when you don't play Crushing Hammers. Looks like Brent was sat on a hand full of supporters. But at the very least, he is able to find a Lucario Mermetal and does get that energy down, which I think is actually a really big deal here, as he's going to continue to Intrepid Sword into the active.
Still no energy hit off Intrepid Sword. 2 Intrepid Swords, 0 energy. It's not what you're looking for. We do have a Crushing Hammer that Diego's got that he could choose to take advantage of. And we've got a Cherish Ball. Could go for an ADP. He's got Morile there. He's got Dedenne. So there's certainly some options. But it also gives him just a nice chance to have a look through his deck. We can see what he's playing, and he can just see what his prizes are.
Yeah, it's always a good habit to know what you have access to, especially in what can be slower, grindier games. Some of the things that he's keeping an eye on, his switch outs, his Tool Scrapper will no doubt be one of those cards he keeps count of as well. He's also just making sure that he knows what he has already used when he's doing his prize counting. He plays 1 copy of Reset Stamp as well as 1 copy of Big Charm, I believe, as well. So he has a couple interesting one-offs in his deck. He's able to Dedenne here as well. He can Crobat and quick ball away the other ADP that's in his deck if he wants to as well, just to thin a little bit more here. I imagine that's what we're going to see. Morwell as well also is fairly low damage output in this matchup. Those seem like better options. Or he could completely choose to fill his board and just grab another Zacian to attack with, potentially. Seems like a decent shout.
Yeah, that's not a bad play at all. Dedene's going to come down, grab 6 new cards, see what options he's got. Does hit the water energy, which is absolutely crucial here, because that's what you needed to get the GX attack off. So that is the one card he was really looking for. Crobat's got the air balloon attached, so you can just retreat into the ADP. You can get the altered creation. I mean, what more do you really need here, right? You've got energy on the board. You've got a Metal Saucer in hand, which could be played to get even more energy on the board. You're about to use your GX attack. You've used a GX attack before your opponents use theirs or got any energy on the board. Of course, what we would expect to see now is probably Lucario and Melmetal coming and stealing those energy.
Yeah, it's going to look to remove those. Like we kept saying, Ultimate Ray is just so dangerous. It just allows too many Zacian to be powered up. And it's difficult to keep up a trade when Diego can take additional prize cards here. Diego sat on almost an absolute monster. Like, if he draws a switch card next, like off the top here, he's going to be in such good shape. He could Boss's Orders up a Zacian and Tool Scrapper the goggles off and actually take a KO thanks to the buff, even after the reduction of the Full Metal Wall here, which would be insane. Otherwise, his hand is really awkward, I think.
Yeah, he needs that switch. He gets an energy switch. It's the wrong kind of switch.
So close, but this is still pretty decent for him. So the only fear is if you overcommit to one Zacian now, I feel like you have to give up on Boss's Orders. I think you try and set up 2 Zacian and just play Professor's Research here. Looks like energy switching plays opened up for Diego by the looks of things. Going to commit to the Arceus Dialga Palkia, interestingly enough, here. He can reset stamp just a -1. This is an indicator that he's definitely using Professor's Research this turn.
Oh, yeah. Here comes the Tool Scrapper, getting rid of both of those metal goggles. They reduce damage by 30, so bearing in mind we've already seen that Full Metal Wall has come down, so those Pokemon are taking 60 less damage. We do see a switch here, but we don't see any kind of energy switch there. We have an energy spinner, which could be used to grab an energy here. So it's a bit of a shame here, because obviously, with an energy switch, maybe we would get the attack from ADP there, get some more energy out on the field. Not an option here, so we can grab an energy with the energy spinner, but it doesn't look like Diego's going to have the attack he wants. It looks like he can use an attack if he wants to. It's just not going to be the one he would ideally want. It's not ADP's attack. It's not a Brave Blade into a Bent Zacian. It's not what he was looking for, frankly.
I'm actually a little bit surprised by this switch, to be honest with you. I guess he's just trying to bait a Zacian into the active, make the Steel Fist fairly ineffective from Brent, rather than allowing it to go on to ADP. And I think this is specifically important that Diego knows Brent's deck list doesn't play any Crushing Hammers. I think after you see the Full Metal Wall, you basically always abandon your ADP in this matchup if they play Crushing Hammers, because it's just so difficult to try and weave in, especially when its damage output isn't all that great. But when you know that Brent doesn't have Crushing Hammers in his deck, you can actually try and still get an Ultimate Ray off. So it's good to see that Diego sort of paid attention to what's available to Brent and, sees that he can try and rebuild this ADP and make the most out of his water energies.
Yeah, absolutely. It gives them a lot of options. And this is the thing we keep talking about with open deck lists. It's very, very different playing a deck with open deck lists. When you don't know what your opponent's playing, there are large parts of the game. I mean, we've all lost games. I lost a game because my opponent played a second copy of that supporter, and nobody plays a second copy of that supporter. Well, with open deck lists, that's not an issue. Diego's not sitting there going, I don't know if he plays Crushing Hammer. He hasn't played any yet. Maybe he's going to draw into them later. He knows they're not there, and it makes such a big difference as you're going through the game. I like Diego's play here, just being a little bit more cagey. He knows it's essentially 2 KOs rather than 3 in order to win the game. So sometimes it's just kind of sit back and try and engineer those 2 KOs rather than having to go ahead and rush, because that Lucario and Melmetal, that's a lot to take down.
Yeah, I think in many ways he might even be happy looking to Intrepid Sword toward Boss's Orders and just completely ignoring Lucario and Melmetal in some regard as well, especially now that Brent's got 2 energy attached to one of his bench Zacian, and he didn't have many actions at all, to be honest. Big Charm is a really big one-of in this matchup as well, because now you can try and make yourself out of range of a Brave Blade from the opponent. Brent does play one copy of Tool Scrapper. I'm not sure if it's been played yet already or not, though. But it looks like it could be a fairly routine... Well, there's the option to Metal Saucer to a Zacian. I believe there's still energies in the discard pile. And he can always Marnie if he wants to, or he could just research this entire hand away. The only thing that's awkward is the switch that you don't want to get rid of. Yeah, so he's just going to Marnie this away and look to find an energy to attack with ADP rather than Zacian. And he's certainly found those, yeah.
Free energy and an energy switch. I mean, there's a few options going on there, and you're absolutely right. The energy is going to go on to the ADP here, and now this is going to be huge, because Ultimate Ray is going to get free energy out of your deck, and this is basically saying to Brent, good news, I've got all the energy I could need. Literally all the energy. Although I actually drew a bit too much off of that Marnie. Would like to have drawn one or two fewer energy so they could be attached with Ultimate Ray.
Yeah, and I think this play's also opened up because I think Brent threw away 2 of his Malolana with that ugly Professor's Research at the start as well. So Diego's been, pretty happy to just have a routine small bit of chip damage here, knowing that the damage won't be cleared too easily from Brent as well. So Diego really just keeping an eye, keeping track of, what's in the discard pile for Brent and sort of putting the squeeze on him slowly right now without overcommitting resources, which is, a huge thing that you can fall into against this matchup. You can feel that you're steaming ahead with prize cards and really getting over the line, but then they can really put the brakes on you quite quickly, the Lucario Melmetal player, with the amount of reduction that they have and Brave Blade slowly chipping away at you. So Diego going slowly, leaving himself, with not many cards left in his deck, which means there's, not much that Brent can do to disrupt him anymore, and only a few attacks away from winning here.
Yeah, and you can see, Diego, like you say, he's been around for a very, very long time. He's won the World Championships. Very, very good player. He's played all kinds of games with all kinds of decks, and he's the kind of player that's able to adapt on the fly. A lot of the time, we see these ADP decks just rushing, and it's basically a case of, I'm going to use my Jex attack, I'm going to gust 2 little Pokemon off the bench, I'm going to take 3 prizes off each, boom, I'm going to win the game. That's not this game. So we see a slower game, we see building up the ADP, knowing there's no Crushing Hammers, and we see just a bunch of Pokemon with 2 energy on each. He's developed 3 attackers, which are either ready to go or 1 energy away. So it's not like Brent can just start taking all his energy off the field. And we see just poking for 50 damage with Lucario and Melmetal. That's not getting Brent very close to winning the game.
Certainly isn't, and we even see a Crushing Hammer hit heads for Diego here. He can be quite happy in just announcing Ultimate Ray and thinning those energies back out of his deck and setting both Zacian up ready to go, basically. So, yeah, it's looking pretty good for Diego, who will just be needing a boss's orders to close the game. And if Brent even actually does take a knockout on this ADP in response, there's already Eldegoss in hand. So, at the moment, Diego's over the line. He needs to be hand disrupted to be able to lose this game now.
Yeah, pretty much, unless he somehow can't find boss's orders. But like you say, the only way he doesn't find boss's orders at the moment is if nothing gets KO'd, and nothing being KO'd is generally not a great way to lose a game. You're usually in a pretty good position if nothing's being KO'd. So we do see Lily's Pokédoll in the active. Really nice item card. It's a item card Pokemon that doesn't give up a prize. But right now, we need to see Brent taking KOs. But what does he KO? There's nothing he can KO to win the game and get ahead in the prize race. And there's so much energy on Diego's board that there's nothing that can be KO'd to remove the energy and slow Diego down. So where does he go?
Yeah, ultimately, it's a just a pretty bad position for him. He doesn't even have the option to use boss's orders here, so he's just going to have to use Professor's Research. And he does find himself a Tool Scrapper, which is kind of a big deal. Getting rid of the Big Charm especially is a big hit for him. He may even just have to Intrepid Sword here. I feel like you can't take this KO. It doesn't get you far enough through. I feel like all you can do really is use one Zacian to deal with one of Diego's, and then you use your other Zacian to deal with the other one, if that makes sense. Just make your one Zacian that currently has the goggles on tank a hit and hope that there's no gusting, but looks like Brent didn't have any of those options available, and it should be down to Diego now just to Eldegoss for boss's orders here to win.
Yeah, it should be a fairly straightforward game at this stage. He's got the energy on Zacian, he's got the Eldegoss in hand, and we see the well played, because he knows he's got Eldegoss in hand, he knows he's got Boss's Orders, 2 of them in the discard pile, and Diego is just going to boss his Orders up that Zacian, take a nice easy KO, and that is going to put the former world champion ahead 1-0.
And Brent really didn't lay much of a glove on Diego there at all. He was in complete control the turn before actually winning the game. He pretty much had it completely sewn up. Brent, you know, his disruption options aren't that good against ADP, to be honest. He's commit 4 spaces to power plants, which are quite good in some matchups. It can sometimes slow down the ADP, but we saw that Diego was able to, you know, really sit in cruise control the entire time. He's slowly rolled over Brent there, you know, just rebuilding an ADP manually, basically, and was able to get over the line. When Brent's not playing Crushing Hammers, it can feel quite daunting against the ADP matchup, and especially when they're playing Tool Scrapper and a few other tech cards here and there, the Big Charm as well being a bit of a pitfall. So Diego's got enough sort of greedy one-offs in his deck to really give himself some big swing turns against the Lucario Melmetal, and that's actually a big deal because they're so content to try and have a slow game plan and try and like buy extra turns off of players, that with Diego's interesting one-offs that he's playing in his deck list, he's been able to you know, put the squeeze on Brent having no real outs to close the game.
And that was what was really interesting about the game. It was a slow game. Diego was kind of just sitting back there chilling and being like, yeah, attach a little bit of energy, whack a Crobat in the active, I'm cool for a minute. And with Brent not getting big attacks off with Brave Blade early enough, Diego was able to just completely set up his board, and we saw a proper checkmate scenario at the end. Diego had developed his board to the point where there was just nothing really Brent could do. But hey ho, let's head on over to game 2 and see if Brent can build up a better strategy this time, see if he can build up a way to take down those ADP, get some better attacks, and give himself a good chance to go and take game 2 from Diego.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue there was that he just had a professor's research that got rid of both Balolanas. So it allowed Diego to really just, you know that every bit of damage that he was dealing meant a lot and was not going to be undone for any reason. And that's something that Brent's going to hope to do, because it's one of the biggest tools that the Lucario Melmetal player has in their arsenal, which is just saying, we can undo a bunch of damage and make your earlier attacks useless.
Yeah, healing 120 damage on a supporter card is genuinely a pretty good thing to do, honestly. We do see that Diego's had another less than ideal starter. It's that Dedenne again. No Crobat to keep him company, unfortunately. And we do see Brent starting off with an Ultra Ball, dropping a Metal Energy. Always good because of Metal Saucer, being able to get that energy out a bit faster. And you did make the point in the previous game, Joe. These Lucario and Melmetal decks, if they can just get an energy attachment turn 1, hit an energy off Intrepid Sword, and then energy attachment turn 2, you know, that's a KO on something like a Dedenne really early on in the game. And that, you know, 2 early prizes could be enough to swing the game, so that's what Brent's going to be looking for here. Or maybe it's an energy Metal Saucer onto a second Zacian, and then a switching card next turn. Either way, a turn 2 Brave Blade would go a long way here to helping Brent set up, because Diego's going to want that GX attack. So if Brent can start taking cheeky prizes before that happens, that could be big.
Certainly could do, and I think, you know, unbeknownst to Brent, actually putting down a power plant here early on would be huge and catastrophic for Diego, really, because his hand is completely based on this one Cherish Ball right now. There's nothing else going on for him. If Brent, seeing as though he got rid of an energy, you have to think he has an attachment in hand. He's actually going for a more passive approach, which is just attaching to the Lucario Melmetal and Intrepid Swording, and it does go over to Diego here.
Absolutely. Diego, he's not got an amazing hand here. Got a couple of switching cards, got an energy, he's got a Cherish Ball, but he hits heads on Crushing Hammer. That's pretty big, getting rid of that energy. But the problem is, he either goes to Dedenne and discards his entire hand, or he goes ADP and attaches an energy, but then there's no draw on his side. There's not even a Zacian or a Quick Ball to get a Zacian. So it's one of those situations where dropping a second Dedenne looks like a horrible play because of how much you're getting rid of and because your board is literally just 2 Dedenne. But it's kind of that, or cross your fingers you draw into something next turn. And that's rarely a good idea.
Yeah, it's certainly a scary position to be in. I think the good news is a Crushing Hammer hits heads and there's not much pressure coming down from you. So because it's 3 switch in hand, there's an argument to be made to just going for ADP here and just attaching a water and passing and playing it cool with the hand. But there are risks there for sure.
It's such an awkward hand. Because Dedenne gets rid of too many resources. He is going for the ADP. And then proper job top deck mode here. There's nothing in his hand which is going to draw him any cards. I mean, he's got lots of outs. He's got plenty. He's got a few Zacian. He's got Quick Pull. He's got supporters. Essentially, Diego's going, I think I've got enough cards in my hand that draw or give me access to draw that I am going to draw out of this before Brent puts on too much pressure.
Yeah, or equally that removing this many switch outs this early loses me the game in about 10 turns time, and all the actions that I do after Dede changing these 3 switches loses me the game anyway.
That is another excellent point. You know, the fact of the matter is Zacian cannot attack 2 turns in a row, which makes those switches pretty gosh darned important. So you can't lose them all too early. It is a sneaky, awkward hand. It's not ideal.
Luckily, Diego did kind of play it super cool. He just, you know, an energy to turn 1 ADP is like still the dream turn, so you can actually bluff a decent hand here. So, you know, Brent could just randomly Marnie, none the wiser. He's actually not going to, and he's just going to Intrepid Sword again here.
And sometimes playing a Cherish Ball and not getting... Oh, he hits the energy, and he's got a switch. So we're going to see a GX attack here. Problem is, Lucario and Melmetal is definitely going to get rid of that energy if there's any kind of switching card. So Diego could be left with no draw and no energy and no attackers.
Yeah, still in top deck mode, but he's still played the hand cool. He's still got the in air quotes optimal turn 2 play from ADP, really. We are seeing the switch here from Brent, so it will be a response GX attack here of the Full Metal Wall, no doubt. And does he have that second energy? He must do if he's playing the switch here. You can't just go in for the reduction at this point. It's not important enough. You must have the second energy.
Yeah,
looks like he's got Quick Ball as well.
Well, it's just it's too, like you say, the energy reduction. Diego's not really putting much pressure on here. I mean, even an attack next turn doesn't do a huge amount, especially with no Zacian on the bench. I mean, what are you thinking if you're Brent here? You saw him Cherish Ball. Oh, there's a Marnie coming down. Brent thought he had a workable hand. Because when you Cherish Ball and you just get an ADP and manually attach, you know, Brent might be thinking, hang on a second, I know he plays another Dedenne. He must have a workable hand. He didn't.
Yeah, Diego played it cool, and it's really, really paid off for him. Looks like Brent was missing that energy, so he was forced into a Marnie on his own end. And yeah, now Diego's able to switch out of his ADP. He can Quick Ball to find a Zacian and just Marnie again here in response, trying to look for energy attachments.
Oh, that is... And then, of course, once the Zacian's on the board, you've got your Intrepid Sword. And that's why these Zacian decks, they rarely draw this badly. Because most of the time, you've either got a Zacian or you've got some Pokemon search to get you a Zacian. And no matter how bad your hand is, you just Intrepid Sword. And maybe your opponent drops a Marnie, but it doesn't really matter if your opponent drops a Marnie because you had a terrible hand. You've still got a new hand. It's rare to see this kind of hand, but Diego is out of it now. We've got an energy to attach this turn, which is huge. We've actually got a Metal Saucer as well, because energy was dropped away from the ADP with the GX attack. So we're going to be able to get 2 energy on the board here. Oh, and we're actually going to see an energy switch here over to the ADP. Second energy there. And then, do we see an Ultra Ball for a Dedenne?
It would have to be Crobat because the power plant, and he's got rid of his second Dedenne now as well. Yeah, but he could Crobat and dig if he really wants to here. I don't really see a big reason to not, so I feel like it's good to get a 6-card dig here.
Absolutely.
And Intrepid Sorting still is on the table, but so yeah, I feel like that's a decent play. It's interesting how much he's leaning into the ADP. It made a lot of sense last game because the Malolanas were gone for Brent. They weren't options at all. Here it feels a little bit riskier. Maybe he's just thinking he may not have enough energy to see himself through if he overcommits to a Zacian and just gets hit with boss's orders or something like that.
Quite possibly. I mean, like you say, the ADP doesn't take 1-hit KOs. It takes 2-hit KOs, which, the water energy of that is huge. And they're undone by Mallow and Lana. Zacian gets a big 1-hit KOs, but then again, if they go down and you've not developed your board enough, and it might just be that Diego's playing another slow game here and going, look, even if you've got Mallow and Lana, I'm just going to use ADP to get energy on the field, and then when I've got energy on the field, I can then actually start into looking KOs. And if you don't Mallow and Lana, yay! Bonus prizes. And if you do, I'm still kind of alright with it. Because Diego's still got Crushing Hammers, and Brent still doesn't have a good attacker built up.
Yeah, Brent may be forced into just using another Intrepid Sword here, to be honest. Not seeing much else for him. Diego, like you said, has a really good turn next turn. He can Crushing Hammer, he can Big Charm a Zacian that he then attaches onto with an Ultimate Ray as well. So we actually do see a Professor's Research from Brent, so hopefully he can start developing some more things. Lily's Pokédoll, decent if he really wants to buy a turn here whilst Intrepid Swording, and that's exactly what we're going to see. Try and make Diego have a better hand, because just getting a 350 on the Luke Metal was too juicy there.
Oh yeah, and it was too good in the previous game. You know, we saw the 2-hit KO, and it's all well and good saying, well, you know, Mallow and Lana undoes the damage. Yes, it does, if you've got Mallow and Lana in hand at the right time, and that's not something you can necessarily rely on. Crushing Hammer could be big. It's a Tails here, but like you say, we see the Big Charm onto Zacian, and honestly, even if you have to attack and take out the Pokédoll, it means the Pokédoll's not coming back. It's in the discard pile and it's not being recovered. And you're still accelerating a bunch of energy. You're not giving up any prizes doing it. It's not in KO range of any of Brent's Pokemon. And if the worst thing that happens is you only draw a bunch of energy and get them attached, well, it's not the worst turn ever.
And looks like we're seeing the retreat from Diego here. I really like seeing how happy he is to leave ADP active, because having your Zacian in the back to deal with your opponent's Zacian is just such a nice thing to have, especially now that there's a Big Charm developed, and leaving Brent with just a 4-card hand size means, you know, you can be the one dictating what you're attacking into, and that's a really nice deal for him. So he's debating whether or not to play around potential Tool Scrapper Boss's Orders plays, but he is going to commit all 3 to one Zacian here.
It's kind of awkward. A lot of the time you see people leaving 2 energy on a Zacian knowing that you can just attach and attack, and then if it does get KO'd, you don't lose too much energy. But then there's always a risk that you get Marnied and don't draw into an energy, and you really wish you'd attached the previous one. So clearly Diego thinks it is more likely that he's going to be in a good position to, you know, he's more worried about the Marnie running out of energy than the weird Tool Scrapper Boss's Orders play.
Yeah, one thing that was quite interesting was that he actually chose to take this KO on the Lily's Pokédoll rather than just leaving the Dedenne active and just Intrepid Swording with another Zacian potentially. I think maybe getting the 3 on the bench Zacian now is the biggest reason for that. But trying to just pick and choose when to Boss's Orders is also a really big deal, because Brent can, at the very least, get a decent Steel Fist attack in here and set this ADP in range of a Zacian hit, whilst also hopefully finding more energy attachments for another Zacian.
I really do like getting the energy on. I mean, there's a Boss's Orders in Diego's hand right now, so, you know, trying to take out a Zacian, trying to get the energy off the board. I believe there is a Metal Goggles on there, so we would need to see that Tool Scrapper, I believe, to actually get a KO here. But it's still one, you know, I like going after the energy, going after the Zacian, and essentially just saying, look, we're both playing Zacian, but I've got more energy on mine than you've got on yours. That gives me an advantage.
Yeah, absolutely does. We are seeing Brent using a Cynthia Caitlyn here, getting rid of the Zamazenta that he was just deck thinning, and he picked up a Marnie from the discard pile for a future turn, and we'll see if he is just going to end on a Steel Fist here. He also picks up a Metal Goggles, which isn't too bad. Pushes the easy 2-shot of the ADP into a 3-shot, or at least forces a Zacian to take an attack for one of those 2 as well, so decent pickup there. Will he choose to take an energy out of his deck and attach? He certainly will, to start threatening the heavy impact as well later down the line.
And now there are some decisions to be made for Diego. Does he essentially, you know, the ADP I believe is now in Brave Blade range, so do you leave it in the active knowing it could maybe be KO? Do you bring up a Zacian to try and take a KO? What do you try and take the KO on? Do you try and 2-hit KO the tag team in the active? Or do you just play a Professor's Research hoping that you hit the Tool Scrapper for next turn or the turn after? There doesn't seem to be an ideal play from Diego here. Nothing I can see that would be just a kind of, yes, that's a great play.
I'm actually kind of surprised that we see him Primate Wisdoming the Boss's Orders back. I think even just using ADP to attack the Zacian was my most tempting play there. Try and set up a 2-hit KO on it. Because that's the thing you're most afraid of. You're not afraid of 150 damage from a Lucario Mermetal on any of your Zacians, it's normally down to, it's literally a dogfight. It's a Zacian attacking into a Zacian most of the time that's most important. And this 120 can get so easily wiped away. I mean, the same thing can be said for the Zacian. I guess maybe just the energy thinning is the priority for Diego here. The reason why he's hitting into this rather than bossing orders.
Maybe. I mean, the fewer energy you've got, that water energy is not doing anything. The water energy is for ADP. ADP's up and rolling. You've said yourself several times, there are no hammers in Brent's deck. So the next to water energy, they don't pay the attack cost for Zacian. The best use they can be is, hey, now Crobat can discard it to retreat. Getting out your deck means you're more likely to into your switch, your boss's orders, your tool scrapper, whatever it might be that you need. We know that Diego is going to top deck that boss's orders next turn, because he put it back with the... he's not, because he used Ultimate Ray. My apologies on that one. So we know it's in the deck, so maybe we do just see a Professor's Research next turn, trying to dig for some stuff. There's no more energy. Oh, but all of that's out the window. Down comes Marnie, although we could still just see a Professor's Research next turn.
So no Malolana from Brent here. And Diego does pick up the Great Catcher, which is looking pretty nice for him actually now. So it seems to have worked out pretty well for him, to be fair. He can even weave in the reset stamp that he's drawn into if he chooses to Great Catcher away his top deck. So looking pretty strong here, to be fair. The Marnie's done him a good solid, I'd say.
Well, it's an energy spinner when we know for a fact there are 0 energy left in Diego's deck, so I would say that's... I would describe it as a superfluous card.
He does, yeah, he got money.
He got
back
money,
in.
of course.
Yeah.
So there was 1 left. Okay,
so
I'll give you that.
I think he's Oranguring to protect the Great Catcher to see if he draws into Tool Scrapper instead, which I really like. So, oh my goodness. Okay. That's why you would do the Oranguring first, for sure. That's a really huge pickup. That's really huge. Like I said, you much prefer dealing with Zacians than dealing with the Lucario Melmetal. Yes, it is damaged. Yes, Brent can remove that damage, but you're not afraid of 150. You're afraid of a Brave Blade from the opponent. So dealing with their Zacians is huge here.
And this has turned into a game where Tool Scrapper... It's all Tool Scrapper. Because next turn, Brent is going to be desperately looking for a couple energy on the Zacian and a Tool Scrapper to get his own return KO. And like you say, it's now a dogfight literally and figuratively between Zacians. And those tools are proving absolutely huge. We've got plenty of Gusting Diego. He's got the boss's orders now. He's got Crushing Hammer. And honestly here, I mean, what Brent really needs is an energy, a Metal Saucer, and a Tool Scrapper. Even then, he probably also needs Metal Goggles to prevent a return KO. Once again, having more... Oh, there's a Tool Scrapper.
Ooh, that's big.
Having more... But then Diego's still got a Zacian on the bench to return KO. Which is why we are going to need the Metal Goggles as well to prevent a... That's a lot of cards needed in one turn.
Yeah, Brent absolutely does need a lot here. He's going to need a Professor's Research if he's going to try and get things rolling, or a really, really good Marnie that we're going to be seeing here. Diego's been able to thin every energy out of his deck, so there's pretty much just a bunch of great trainer outs for him now.
There's the Goggles, there's the Metal Saucer. Does he have a switch?
If he has to pay retreat, it's a little awkward, but you have to do it here. You have to deal with his Zacian.
Absolutely. Well, like you said, no one's scared of Lucario and Melmetal. That is not going to win Brent the game. This is huge, because we know that Diego only plays 1 Tool Scrapper, and we know he dropped it the previous turn. There is no return KO coming here, and Brent's down to 2 prizes remaining, or 1 prize remaining, sorry. Of course, Zacian cannot attack 2 turns in a row, so it's going to be awkward to reset that. But that does give a clear route to victory for Brent here.
Can Oranguru change the situation for Diego? Can Oranguru give him a win condition here?
I mean, to be fair, Boss's orders surely would just be able to...
Yeah, there's Great Catcher in the deck still as well, exactly.
Because that would just bring up the Lucario and Melmetal. He's already got the switch, all just to retreat with the water energy, and that would then allow him to just attack for game, swing for free prizes, and win right now.
Yeah, so that's a huge Oranguru there. I think you always play these sources before Professor's Researching as well. I think you just commit everything. You don't play the switch, though. I think you just leave the Crobat in the active. Possibly energy switching onto the Crobat, even, if you really want to. Oh, my goodness. He's not even playing towards the 50-50. He's just really hoping that Brent doesn't have switch boss, which is a really specific hand.
It's a really specific hand. I wouldn't even need boss's orders. He could just KO the Crobat.
Just double switch. My apologies.
Just a couple of switch. Literally, he just needs to be able to get in and out the active. It's a lot to ask this stage of the game. So many resources already gone. We could, I don't know, retreat double metal saucer or switch an air balloon. Now we've got the Zacian down. It all depends what's left in Brent's deck. He's not got a huge amount. We are in the late stages here. There's 17 cards left in his deck, I believe.
Yeah, 17 left. I think there are 3 switches played, actually. So it would have to be switch Malolana, I think, or some combination of attaching metal sorcering and playing a switch back in with the Zacian. Still some specific cards here, but not out of the woods yet. The boss's orders on a Rangaroo. Looks like it's going to be an Intrepid Sword on the bench here. Diego has a second chance.
Diego does. He just needs a Gusting card. It's as simple as that. He draws another switch, but, I mean, at this stage, I mean, it's one, Brent's got 1 prize remaining. I think the time has probably come to just switch into the Zacian, play the Professor's Research, and just, obviously after the Primate Wisdom, just hope you hit that Gusting.
Yeah, I'm trying to piece together why... Oh, there's the Great
there it
Catcher.
is. There's the Great Catcher. So that's all he needs. He can use the Great Catcher, discard 2 cards from hand, bring up the Lucario and Melmetal, manually retreat the Crobat, and it looks like Diego is going to take a 2-0 victory, carry on through the losers bracket, and we're going to be saying goodbye to Brent.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but Diego did play really well there. The only thing that was surprising was to not see the Professor's Research last turn. I'm trying to think if it was Marnie to the bottom so that he knew that he couldn't research into it, but it wouldn't make sense if he just Intrepid Sworded and Primate Wisdomed anyway. So in theory, he would have had access to it and would have had a far less scary final turn and closed the game a turn earlier. But still some impressive stuff on show for sure. Seeing how much he used the ADP was really interesting to see. I don't often see that. Then again, you do expect sometimes Crushing Hammers in Lucario Melmetal based builds. So being allowed the license to just freely Ultimate Ray and build up your entire board of Zacian and leaving your deck as basically only good supporter cards is really cool to see, and it just meant that there's nothing Brent can do disruption-wise at that point. Diego's just sat on good outs, essentially, to close the game, and that's what we saw there.
And that seems to be the difference in the game. You know, it was partly the fact that, hey, now my deck has no energy and sweet, I'm going to draw into whatever I need. But it's also a case of, well, I've now got my attackers set up. We saw throughout that whole match, because of the ADP, Diego constantly had more attackers set up, constantly had more energy on the field, so even when Brent was taking KOs, Diego had something coming in afterwards. I do also think there's something really to be said about the fact that Diego won Game 1. If you win Game 1, you can play a bit more cautiously and you know, if this doesn't come around, it's okay, there's a Game 3, and I won Game 1, I almost won Game 2, I feel confident. If, however, you've lost Game 1, maybe you do take a bit more of a chance, knowing that at least if I Professor's Research and whiff, I went aggressive and missed it, rather than sitting back and letting my opponent win the game.
And let's not forget as well, this was the game, I believe, where Diego took the risk. He just cherish balled for an ADP and just slow rolled attachments like nothing was wrong with his hand whatsoever. So sometimes you look at those hands and you just say, oh my goodness, I can't believe the algorithm of PTCGO has done this to me. But if you just play it cool at times and just assess those situations and think, how important are these switches? Can I win without them? Diego said, no, I probably can't, because, my opponent knows my deck list. They can see so many switches hitting the discard pile. They can loop boss's orders with the help of Cynthia and Caitlyn and, stall me out at some stage of the game. So I need to go down a slower route. I need to play patiently here. He checked his deck. He saw, how many draw outs he had, how many outs to energy cards he had, how many ball search cards. Even any Zacian was a good draw there. So I'm pretty sure he had decent odds of having, a decent top deck. Energy may not have even been the best draw for him there. But it allowed him to weave in that GX attack, and then the following turn, getting Marnied into, a safe space again, put him back in the driver's seat.
I mean, that turn 1, that was... I think I might have been too nervous to make that play. Just going, I'll grab a GX, manually attach, it'll probably be fine. That's not the way I generally play the game, but I don't know. Maybe there's an argument that Diego's a slightly better player than I am.
Well, PTCGO also allows you to have a much better poker face as well. You don't have to sit across from your opponent like a meter away and say like, oh, I can't if only you could see this hand, like kind of thing. And it's much easier to tell when someone has a bad hand in person compared to across the screen. So maybe that helped him out as well.
I think it genuinely did. I think it really did. You know, we all like